We made it happen. Jimmy was an incredible success. I don't know where he is. I gotta find him. Gosh, I don't. Oh.
Oh yeah, George. Oh, George.
Right
George.
here. Yeah.
We did it, brother.
Yes, we
hey,
did.
Thanks to Dan. You know what? And in the ring with Dan and Brittany. Hey, brother, man, hey, he's about the most cat. I just love him to death. I love you. Thanks for having me. Hey, you're the best. I'm telling you, brother. In the ring with
Dan and Benny.
Yeah.
We love you. Thank you so much.
Dan.
Mwah.
Oh yeah.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Dan and Benny in the Ring. I'm Dan Spasciano, joined as always by the original Long Island Iced B himself, Benny Scala. Benny, how you doing, buddy?
Well, Dan, I survived my date with a dahlia last week, which is more than I can say about most of my dates.
Oh, geez. Do I even want to know?
What, a dahlia? The hurricane.
Oh, I honestly thought this was going to end up as another one of your dog walker jokes or something.
No.
Well, I know you're back in Florida. You were here with us in Virginia for a while, so you survived. Everything good at Stormfront?
Everything's fine.
Excellent. Well, Benny, we did a good run. A bunch of the shows we've done recently have all concentrated on the women's side of wrestling, and we're going back to that tonight. So we've got a third face joining us this evening. Let's tell everybody who's online with us.
Yeah, Dan, we've had several great ladies of the 80s on our show, and here's another one, although her career extended actually into the, well into the new millennium. And, it's become a Dan and Benny thing lately to bestow new nicknames to our guests. So Ron Shaw is now the Earl of Upsets, which a name he wears proudly. And we named Bugsy McGraw the Shaman of Sick Power. And although our guest is known throughout the wrestling world community as the Boston Bad Girl, I'm proposing that we christen our guest the Siren of Scituate. And now, nicknames aside, she's a member of the New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame and has been honored by the Cauliflower Alley Club. And I'm very pleased to welcome Brittany Brown to Dan and Benny in the Ring. Brittany, welcome.
Thank you so much, you guys. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
How's the nickname? You like it?
I love it.
Okay, good. It's all yours.
Thank you so much.
That's what we do.
Unlike anybody on the Yankees, Benny, you're batting 1,000 with these nicknames recently.
My OPS is about 4 billion.
Well, Brittany, we appreciate your time joining us, but we always want to start with the same question because it's really interesting. Everybody gives us a different answer. We love to kind of get the the ball rolling, kind of set the foundation. So we ask everyone this, but I think I want to start single answer. When did the wrestling bug bite you as a fan?
So just as a fan, I was like, 5, 6, 7, watching it with my dad. We loved it. We loved the heels, which I didn't even know what that was then. But we loved the bad guys, obviously. And of course, my mother was in the other room screaming that she didn't want that on, not in front of the children and all that kind of stuff. So it goes all the way back as far as I can remember. Absolutely loved it.
Now, Brittany, growing up in the Northeast, so I'm assuming you're talking about the old WWF?
I can only remember back to WWF. And that's all.
WWF, okay.
Yeah, that's all that we saw. It's funny. I have some friends of the same age that lived in different states, obviously. And they're like, what do you mean? You didn't get to see the Von Erichs? And I'm like, no. So, that's all we had where I was.
So who are your favorite heels?
Well, Moolah, of course.
Right.
Right. And I think I started watching at like the tail end of Kowalski, the very tail end of him. He was older then. And, I loved, I kind of liked the managers the most, like the Grand Wizard. I just loved his cockiness and classy Freddie Blassie. I loved, the slogans and the things that he said. And of course, who didn't call their friend a pencil neck geek, right?
Now, were you, I guess we had Tony Rose on our show, and her and Donna Cristianello were like the top women's tag team in the Northeast. Was that before your time?
Yeah, a little before my time. Yep.
Okay. All righty. So now, when did you decide that this was going to be something you did, for a vocation, for a living?
Well, I never really decided that. I just it was something I always wanted to do, but I never thought I would do because I figured, how would I find these people? And, back then all you had was the Yellow Pages, and you're not going to find Moolah or Killer Kowalski in there, right? So,
The operator from Moolah.
right? So I saw an ad in the local, Boston paper for this guy that was going to train wrestlers in a city that was about, I don't know, maybe 25 miles from me. It ended up being a scam. So thank God I brought my dad with me, because the guy showed up, but when he saw my father with me, he left. So it ended up being a scam. He was going to take my money and, screw. But, he saw my dad with me. I think I was 19 or 20 at the time. And it's just always something. I've always brought my dad with me, no matter where I went. The first time I went to Moolah's, I even brought him. We flew down there together. And, he just he wanted to check things out, make sure it was legit, especially after what happened to me. And that kind of gave me the bug there. When I saw that ad and I got scammed, I was like, nope, I'm going to do this. And then somehow I found out, I don't remember how, but I found out the Fabulous Moolah's real name. And I literally called 411. I'm not kidding you. I called 411 Columbia, South Carolina, because that's where she was from. And I asked for the number. I got the number. Never in a million years did I think it was really going to be her. But it was. And that's how it all started.
So she answered the phone?
She did.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yep. And I just never dreamed it was really going to be her number. So I figured, I was going to get the, this call is not going to be completed.
Yeah.
Either that, or it would be some family that I was interrupting their dinner, and they'd be like, who? But yeah, so that's how it all started. And, she wrote me a really nice letter. We exchanged addresses and wrote me a really nice letter. And we talked for a while and a few times. And then my father and I ended up getting tickets, and we went down there, and Donna picked us up at the airport. And I learned all about the school and registered. And that's how it all began.
Now, Donna, as in Donna Cristianello, right?
Yes.
Okay. She was one of Moolah's main trainers?
Yes.
Okay.
She was the trainer of the brand new girls.
I gotcha.
Yep. So that's how it all started.
Wow.
Well, before we get, obviously we want to get into your training. So we've had a lot of, like I said in the intro, Benny and I, we've had a lot of women wrestlers on the show who were trained by Moolah. We did a whole series. And you weren't in South Carolina. You commuted back and forth from, because you correct me if I'm wrong, you were working at the time. So you commuted weekly from Massachusetts to Columbia, South Carolina. You were 20. That's got to be an exhausting trip. Was this, kind of walk us through how you got back and forth before we get too much into the actual training, like just getting from Massachusetts to South Carolina weekly.
Yeah, so it was super easy, and it was super cheap at the time. There was an airline called People's Express, and it was $99 round trip. And I got out of work on Friday, left my car at Logan Airport, jumped on the plane, and I had, a standing reservation every Friday night, and off I went. And then got back on Sunday night late, took my car, drove back to Scituate, and then went back to work the next day. And believe it or not, it was like that. I never quit my day job, ever. And I had no intentions of ever quitting my day job. And I'm still doing the exact same thing I was when I was 20.
Wow.
Yep.
So were you the only person who was a part-time student?
Yep.
And they accommodated you for that. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. They were so it was just so awesome. They were so nice to me. It was almost too good to be true. Like at the beginning, I was just like, all right, what am I missing here? Everybody's too nice to me. And, you know, I never had a problem there, and I never had anybody be mean to me. And, you know, Donna was always there to pick me up, and they treated me like family. It was really nice. And, you know, like I said, my dad only went on the first time going down there and checking the place out and me filling out the paperwork and all that. So then it was just me afterwards. And I lived on my own, too. I had my own apartment. Yeah. So.
Now, I
Now, did
know
you stay at the compound on the weekends?
Go ahead,
though?
Yep.
Okay.
I know you were 20. You said you were working and living on your own, but even being detached, were you? I assume because you talked about your father coming and going, they were very supportive of how everything you were doing as far as your training and pushing yourself as hard as you would have and everything.
My father was. My mother was horrified. They were split up when I was 12. So
okay.
Yeah, but she was absolutely horrified what I was doing. And she went to I worked for 28 years in wrestling, and my mother went to 3 matches, and my father never missed one. Wow. In 28 years, no matter where it was. So yeah. And the first time she went, she cried. She could not understand why I was being booed. She was crying, and she was saying, I'm a really good girl. Why are they being so mean to me? Why are they booing? Why are they throwing paper cups at you? Yeah.
Only a mother, right?
Yeah, exactly. She just didn't get it. Whereas my father absolutely loved it. And the more, you know, bad things that happened, the more he loved it.
So, Brittany, Moolah is obviously a very polarizing figure, and we've had, you know, like I said, several guests who trained under her, and it's kind of, most of them were actually quite harsh in their recollections of her. And I mean, I've heard you, you know, do some previous interviews, you were kind of the opposite, but the constant accusation that we heard was that, you know, she got a booking fee, a percentage of the you know, the fee, but that she skimmed a bit off the top of that. So did you experience that? And maybe the reason maybe you came a little bit later than the rest, and maybe that's why you didn't, if you didn't.
I mean, I never heard or saw any of that. And, you know, anything like that only came out recently after she passed away, with that whole, you know, changing the name to the Mae Young and all that. That's the only time I've ever heard that. And I was pretty shocked by some of the things that were being said then and since, because I never witnessed anything like that, any of that stuff.
Yeah, she what they would say was that the promoter would pay, instead of paying them, they'd pay Moolah, and then Moolah would pay them, and, you know, in the translation, they lost a few bucks.
See, to me, I don't know how that could happen, because for example, if I was going there and I was making $300, if that's what Moolah told me I was making, then I would get $300.
Right.
And if I didn't, then there would be a problem. But I never heard anybody say that.
You expected?
Yeah, I mean, never, ever. And I never heard anybody else say that back then. You know, I mean, girls talk, let's face it. I mean, people talk. And before the trainers come into the training area, there's 8 girls in there. And you'd think somebody would have said something like, oh, did you get your pay last night? Because I didn't. I never heard that. Never. Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting, actually. I find it very interesting.
I mean, that is true, though, because you never heard, this has only been like a last 5-year kind of thing. You never heard it before that.
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you, as you can probably tell by my voice, that it's really annoying to me, and it's very upsetting to me, the things that were said about her. And, you know, I just feel like if somebody's going to like crucify and villainize someone, do it while they can stand up for themselves.
Right.
I mean, all these girls had decades and decades and decades to say what they wanted to say, but nobody said it till after she died. Yeah. Why? you know?
Fair enough.
Yeah, take it you weren't a fan of that episode of Dark Side of the Ring then, huh?
No. And I was horrified by some of the interviews that I heard on YouTube and, you know, different podcasts and things. I was just so shocked because some of the people I knew, and I was there when they were there, and I never heard or saw them ever act like this or say anything like this. So I was pretty shocked.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, you said you were on the tail end of, you know, the Kowalski's time. Obviously, you were talking about your round trip airfare, $100, which, by the way, Benny, $100 round trip is great. Last time I flew, I spent almost $100 just in bag fees.
Right.
But you obviously transportation started getting a little much, rising cost of airfare and whatnot. You transferred your training from Moolah to Killer Kowalski, and you mentioned in a previous interview this resulted from a really chance encounter involving a car repair. You mind telling us that story?
Yeah, this is, oh my goodness. So I was trying to figure out, you know, what am I going to do? Because it went up almost 4 times. It went from $99 to $368. And obviously I'm like, all right, I'm living on my own. I'm 21 years old now. How am I going to get $400 a week? Impossible. So I was doing it. And I had this classic Mustang that I was having completely rebuilt, the body on it. So I was at a body shop in Hanover, Mass, and I was waiting for them to open. And I had like a friend, you know, that was going to give me a ride to work, waiting for me to drop the car off. And I saw this big guy sitting in this little tiny Porsche, and it looked, you know, pretty old. And, you know, I thought nothing of it because there was a couple other people sitting there too in their cars, right? And when I got out of my car, when the owner came and I got out of my car, this guy got out of the Porsche and he looked over at me. He walked up to me and he said, "Wow, you're so tall, you could be a lady wrestler." And I'm thinking, who is this guy? How does he know I'm going to Moolah's? Right? He didn't. He honestly did not know. Just because of my height. And he said, "Have you ever heard of Misty Blue Sims?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, this is her Porsche. I'm getting it fixed for her. You ever heard of Killer Kowalski?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And he's like, "Geez, I should bring you down there." And I'm like, "Where's there?" And he's like, "Boston, Mass." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's like, you know, 30 miles from my house. It's no big deal, right?" However, at that time, I had never like even been to Boston, never been to a big city or anything. So me going there the first time I went there with Tony, I met his wife and, you know, made sure everybody was cool and all that. And then I followed him to Walter's, and it was horrifying. The area that he was in was absolutely horrifying. And what I mean is, like, I was petrified to leave my car there because it was that hot rod that I had all redone. And I'm thinking, oh my God, there's not going to be a door left on it. The hood will be gone. The glass will be gone. Right. And I'm stepping over homeless people. I literally was horrified. I had never seen anything like that in my life. And then when I got up there, all those girls were up there, and I was just like, yeah, I don't think I fit in here. And then it was about maybe 9 months to a year later that I said, you know what, I gotta do this. I can't keep paying this. I don't have any more money, you know? So I had to do it. And by the time I did end up going there, all those girls were gone. There was only Cookie. She was still there, and she terrified me. She looked very scary. And she, shortly after I started, went to Japan and worked there for a while. And I was terrified of her. And she couldn't have been more the opposite of what I thought she was.
Oh, so the first time you went to Kowalski school, you didn't sign up right there. You kept on the Moolah's for a bit after that?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I just looked around and said, I don't think this is going to work out. You know, I did not want to drive in there ever again, I'll be honest with you. And school was 4 times a week. It was Tuesday and Thursday after work, and then Saturday and Sunday. And I'm thinking, okay, my car and me lasted once. What are the chances it's going to last again, let alone 4 times a week? But I ended up doing it like a year later. I still had the same car and I did it. And nothing ever happened to the car and nothing ever happened to me. Well, I did have a problem once with a homeless person. They tried to, get money off me and grab my arm and stuff. And I just knocked them down and drove over them and left.
Drove over them?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I panicked and drove over the guy because he tried to, he was touching me.
Did we just have a Marty Jannetty moment here, Benny? Someone?
Nope.
Confession.
I'm getting the Dark Side of the Ring producers on the phone
Is there
right
a statute of limitations on running over a homeless person? I'm not sure about that.
Jesus.
Well, yeah, because that would have been like 1985.
That's I don't know. 38 years?
Yeah, he got up. I looked in the rearview mirror. He got up.
Well, yeah, and he didn't report you, so I guess you're all right.
No. He yelled a few things, and he was there the next time I came, and I can guarantee you he didn't touch me.
All right. So, Brittany, at Kowalski's, you train with a number of future stars, and I'm going to ask you about 2 in 2 separate questions. So the first is Paul Levesque, who, of course, the world knows as Triple H, and you actually did work quite a bit with him. And so talk about the young H. Did you have any idea he would become the megastar that he became?
I mean, probably not, because at that time, we were all it was just all of us. And you didn't know who just wanted to do it on weekends like me and who wanted to make it a career, a lifestyle, etc. So, I mean, did I think he had it in him? Yeah, for sure. Just like Perry Saturn and John Cronus. The day that they walked in there, I just was like, that. Now, those 2, I knew on day one. Just, I saw what they could do on the first day. So those 2, yes, I did. And as far as Paul goes, I mean, he was just very shy, very quiet, very humble. I mean, I don't want to say not friendly, but just shy. In which, I mean, I was the same. So I saw him at every show. I saw him at every training, always spoke, always very nice. I've seen him since multiple times, always speaks, very nice, always a handshake, a hug, a very, very nice person. And I think he deserves everything that he got. And I hate when people say he only has what he has because he married the boss's daughter. That's ridiculous. I mean, he was a star before he started dating the boss's daughter. And
he was always a huge student of the game.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Now, because of the fact that there was a shortage of women there, you pretty much worked with him a lot, didn't you?
No, I mostly worked with Cookie.
Okay, so there was one left then.
Yeah, and then there was a girl also that came in, Jamie West. She came in because Walter moved from Boston to Malden, and he rented space from Richard Burns, who was a karate instructor and a wrestler, and his champion was Jamie West. His league was the USWF, and he had her, and then there was 2 or 3 other girls there also. And then, a few years down the road, Ramblin' Rose and Violet Flame came, and Alexa Starr, and, most people didn't last, but some did. Some quit after like a year or 6 months or 2 years. But yeah, there was a lot of girls. Certainly not compared to guys. I mean, there was 30 guys there and 4 girls. So
yeah. Now, Brittany, at some point, were you considered a graduate though, or were you always a student there?
Oh yeah, I was a graduate, but I didn't always go 4 days a week. I mean, once I started working and you know, and working for other promoters too.
Right.
I would go maybe once a week, maybe twice, if that. And then I just stopped going altogether right around the time Joni came.
What year was that then?
Oh God, I don't even remember. I don't even remember, but she wasn't there very long. And I just ended up not going anymore. I was working every weekend and I really didn't have the time to keep, you know, I couldn't go there on the weekends because I worked, like I said, a full-time job. And then I worked every Friday night, every Saturday night, and sometimes on Sundays. And I was working in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, even. So
What kind of work did you do? Just out of curiosity.
I do insurance.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm third generation. My grandpa and my dad both did that as well.
All right.
Well, continuing with the students, Benny mentioned there were two. Obviously, Paul Levesque, the first. The other notable graduate is Joni Lauer, known to the world as China. She's an interesting case because she was quite critical in her book about Kowalski and his training methods, his practices, which Benny and I were talking before the show, is really the only criticism I'd ever heard of him. We've had some of Kowalski's students on the show before, and they've all nothing but good things to say about his methods.
Yep.
Now, mind you, I mean, Kowalski is a man, Bruno, feuded with for years, and he had nothing but praise. And I mean, that, how many times, Benny, have we said on the show, if Bruno respects you, that's really the only bar you need.
Spoke volumes about him in his book.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not just as a wrestler, but as a person. And Bruno was known for being a judge of character and being a man of moral. So, I mean, you mentioned that she was the reason that you left the school, but kind of, I was hoping you could kind of expand on that a little bit, elaborate on it.
Sure. Yeah. So, she kind of came there with a vengeance. She had absolutely no idea what she was doing, which is normal. I mean, we all came there one day and didn't know what we were doing, didn't know how to lock up, right? But she was going to kind of steamroll over everybody before she knew how to lock up. And she decided that she would undercut the rest of us girls by 50%. So when I heard that, I was just like, you know what? I'm not working for that, because the lowest pay that I get is from Walter. And that was out of, loyalty to him. Everybody else was paying me 2, 3, almost 4 times what he paid me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm not going to work for half. So that's when I walked. And, she did what she did from there. And, there's a lot of interesting stories about her that a lot of people don't know, I'll tell you.
So, in other words, she worked for Kowalski for half of what you were going to work at. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I handed him back the belt and said, good luck to you.
You had that belt for years, didn't you?
I did.
And that was is the IWF?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I had that belt for years.
Well, outside of the character issues that you were so polite to circumnavigate, we talked about recognizing talent. She was such a unique presence when she first kind of became mainstream. Was she one that you saw and you're like, there's something here? Or was it, did you never get that far because of the personality?
No, I never in a million years thought she would last more than 6 months.
Oh, wow.
She was like really, really uncoordinated. She was, I mean, you know what she looked like when she first started. And I was just like, yeah, this isn't going to work. So I had to have been the most surprised person in the world when she became what she became. I'll be honest with you. And I say, you know, absolutely. And I told her at WrestleMania 14, I went to the party with May and Moolah at the Boston Garden afterwards. And I congratulated her and told her I was very proud of her and said, you know, you really amazed me. And I said, good for you. Congratulations. So that was probably one of the last times we ever spoke.
Wow. So, Brittany, natural question: why didn't you have a run in the then WWF? And you really didn't pursue this, but it was on the advice of Killer Kowalski. And can you explain this in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, definitely. So they called either 2 or 3 times. I think it was no, it was 3 times. 3 times they called, and each time Walter said, absolutely not. It's not going to work. They're going to want you to quit your job, which you don't want to do. And I made that clear when I started that I didn't want to do that. And he said, also, it's just not going to work out with the outfits that you wear. He's not going to allow you to wear those outfits, and you won't change them. So why bother? Why bother even doing one match for them? And, you know, I talked to him about it. I talked to my dad about it. And I wasn't willing to change my outfits, which that wasn't the first organization that asked me to change my outfits. And I didn't do it for them, and I wasn't going to do it for anybody. I mean, I had a style of what I wanted to wear, and I was pretty adamant about it. Reason being that I didn't like the fact that people looked at women's wrestling back then as just TNA. And, you know, I had people look at me like I was like a mud wrestler or an oil wrestler in like a bar room or something. And I was just like, no, you've got this confused, because that's not at all what I do. And I don't wear skimpy clothes, and there's no oil on me. And I mean, people just really, really, really misjudged what it was back in the 80s and the 90s. And I just wasn't willing to do the TNA thing. And, you know, Walter knew what they wanted in a girl and how they wanted her to dress and act. And he also knew that I had standards and morals, and I wasn't going to change them for anybody. So that's how that ended up.
Very nice. You know, it's funny. You don't think about it, that the just dynamic, especially nowadays with wardrobe being so intricate with some performers, that something as simple as, you know, you look too much like a real wrestler, it being a stopping block, like how sideshow attraction some areas treated women's wrestling.
Yeah, it was really bad. I mean, I even had an employer once, when he found out that he was the vice president of the insurance agency I worked at, and he was absolutely horrified and basically did compare it. He actually compared it to Jello wrestling.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So I actually was friendly with his wife, because she was also in the insurance business, and we became friends. We worked in the same office, and she was fully convinced that everything I was telling her was the truth. So she told her husband, and she made him come. So they did come to one of my shows that I was working for Kowalski, and he completely accepted it after he saw that, after he saw how I dressed, how I acted. He saw my father there with me, and he knew it wasn't what he thought it was the whole time. So I had a whole new level of respect from him. And I think he was a little afraid of me after that, too.
Probably heard about you running over that homeless guy.
Probably. I don't tell too many people that.
Well, I mean, we used to, you didn't go to the WWF for your reasons, but that wasn't the end all be all. You were still very active in many promotions across the independent circuit, pretty much wrestling every weekend for, as you said, years.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite promoter or a least favorite promoter from that time?
You know, so my least favorite would be Tony Altimore.
Stopper.
Yeah. So he would be the least favorite. And I mean, the favorite, God, I love Dennis Corluzzo. I love Dino Santa, who's still running in, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. He was great to work for. His ref, Dan, we're still friends today from way back then. And of course, I loved working for Walter and everybody, being on the shows with the guys that many of whom I'm still very, very friendly with today. So, I mean, Walter, Dennis Corluzzo, Dino Santa, those were probably my favorites. And like I said, Tony Altimore was the worst.
Why was he the worst?
Because he didn't just want you to wrestle.
No.
Yeah.
Hanging around Lou Albano too much, no doubt, right?
I don't know. I don't know, but I needless to say, I went down to Tony Altimore's in Orange, Connecticut and trained a few times, but that's as far as it went. I was booked on, I believe, 6 shows with him. And when he came to my hotel room and gave me some sad, phony story about his water not working at home and he needed to use my shower and all that kind of foolishness and, putting his hand on my leg and saying, you can't say no to your trainer. I was just like, see ya, bye-bye. And needless to say, I never worked for him because I was immediately pulled from all his shows.
Now, besides the Northeast, I know you worked in Vegas. Where else did you work around the country?
Oh, gosh, I worked in Wisconsin. I worked in Florida. I worked in England a few times. I worked in California. I worked in Oregon. There's a lot of places.
You very gainfully employed throughout the years.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Somebody asked me once, could you have paid all your bills with just wrestling? And I said, yes. Absolutely.
But you weren't going to quit the insurance thing.
Nope. Mm-mm.
And you said earlier you're still working there, so that's incredible.
Yep. Full time, and I've been working from home for 15 years now.
Oh.
Wow.
And I've never been anything but full time since I got my broker's license at the age of 20.
It's what, 7 years ago?
Yeah, pretty much. 7, 8.
Good at math.
Yeah.
So, Brittany, who was your favorite opponent, and was there somebody that you didn't care to wrestle against? And you wrestled against many, many stars of the 80s and 90s. Talk about some of them.
So my favorite, I have 2 favorites that I felt like I worked the best with, and we made each other shine. And these 2 really made me shine. The first one was, I don't know if you remember Shelley Francis from LPWA. She was a student of Walter's also. And before she became Shelley Francis, she wrestled under the name Rosebud. And she was very popular here in New England. And we were more of the same size. She was, like an inch shorter than me. We pretty much weighed right around the same. And, so it was much better than me going against, like I remember I fought Linda Dallas once and I thought, oh my God, I feel like I'm working with a child because she was so little, and I know that she's really, really little and I'm really, really tall. So there was a big, big difference there. But it was a little bit awkward because she was so small and I am so tall. So it was much easier and much more fluid for me working with someone closer to my own size and trained in the same style as I was. So she was my favorite. And then when I met Brandi Alexander, I met her working at a show in Connecticut, and we kind of just really, really hit it off. And I really liked her work, and I started booking her everywhere with me. And she was a little bit smaller than, quite a bit smaller than me, but she wasn't, she was average size for a woman. She was probably 5'8", but she was very talented, very, very talented. And, 10 years younger than me, really, really good. And she learned really, really fast. And I'm surprised she never went to WWE. I really am. Both of them, actually.
Okay.
Well, we're going to expand a little bit later on your heel dynamic. I love the bit where you talked about your mom not liking you getting booed. Well, did you feel that it was easier to get booked being the heel, the big heel that you were, or because usually when you see promotions that have their one or two local girls, they're always kind of the face dynamic. Was it easier to come in as the heel, or did you just kind of transition to what was needed?
I just, to be honest with you, I hated being a babyface. I probably only did it like 2 or 3 times in 28 years, and I hated it. Every time I hated it. I just felt more myself, being a heel. It was more me. It's more the real me. Like, I tell it like it is. I tell you if you're doing something that I don't like. And I guess you could say I'm a bitch.
Did your mom eventually wind up throwing stuff at you? Did you get that much heat?
Well, no, she was just so horrified. Her sister, my aunt, had to get her out of there every time. She was just like crying and shaking. She was a drama queen, believe me. But she is the one that when I was like 3 years old said, "You're going to be an actress someday." And she used to call me Sarah Bernhardt. That's what she used to say.
Yep.
Yep.
She wasn't that far off.
Yep. So yeah, we didn't have the greatest relationship. I was more a daddy's girl, and I kind of sided with dad and kind of went in that direction. And she went off and did her own thing. But she did go to my first match, and she also went to the night that I won my first title. And then she also went to a local show maybe 5 years later, and that was the end of it.
Okay.
Whereas dad went to every single one, no matter what country, what state.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. That's dedication.
Very much so. Yeah, he actually checked himself out of a hospital once to come to one of my matches. And we had a secret knock, so he knocked on my dressing room door. I knew he wasn't coming because I knew he was in the hospital. So I thought, oh, this is going to be kind of weird. This will be the first time ever that my dad's not here. How weird. And I'm dressed and everything. And all of a sudden the knock came on the door. And I went, the only 2 people that know that is me and him. So I'm like, this is impossible. So I went to the door and there he was. And I said, "What are you doing here? You have pneumonia. What are you doing?"
Oh,
and he's like,
jeez.
"Can't miss a match." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "Dad, you've seen me wrestle 150 times. And he's like, "Well, yeah, but not with Heidi Lee Morgan." And I'm like, "Okay, you're right. This was my first time with her, so come on in."
Yeah, that's a true wrestling fan.
That's great. Talk about a fan.
Yeah, he was the best.
So, Brittany, we heard Kurt Angle's story many times that he won the Olympic gold medal with a broken freaking neck. And now my hero, Bruno Sammartino, had suffered a broken neck at the hands of Stan Hansen, and a very serious, most times career threatening, sometimes life threatening. But talk about how you initially sustained your broken neck and the resulting comeback.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, okay. So I mentioned Cookie, the girl that was at Walters. She was a tough cookie, no pun intended. But when she got booked to go to Japan, I had no girls to work with. And I didn't really want to work with guys. I'm still new. I'm shy. I'm that little girl from Scituate. I don't want to be putting my hands all over these sweaty guys, right? So I'm sitting there going, Walter, what am I going to do? And he said, well, there's this new girl. Her name is Paula, and I'm going to have her work with you. And I'm like, okay. So, we're working together. But there was this move that was new to me, and I had only done it with Cookie, and it had gone fine, but it was a sunset flip, and it had gone fine because Cookie had been around a while. She worked with guys all the time. Guys loved working with her. She was great. So for some reason, I just didn't want to do it with Paula. And I ran and I stopped. And I said, Walter, I can't do it. I don't feel safe. And he screamed at me, God damn it, you're going to do it. Blah, blah, blah. Walter, right? So I ran probably 3 times and stopped and said I wasn't going to do it. And then he just made me do it. And she just pile drove my head into the mat.
Oh, jeez.
And this was just on a blue high school gym mat. This was at his old place in Boston that did not have a ring. So this was on a gym mat on a wood floor, and that's how that happened. And I, not by choice, by necessity, figured I was all through because, it was bad.
Did you know right away that you were seriously hurt?
Oh, yeah. And so did he. When I blacked out, and when I woke up, I felt tears streaming down my face, and I just saw Walter's face in mine, and he was just slapping my face. And, it was, I knew. I knew.
He had to have, in his career, seen enough neck injuries to know what had happened as soon as you landed, I would imagine. Oh, yeah, yeah. For him to get up off the chair and come over and kneel down and start slapping me in the face, oh, yeah, he knew there was something wrong because, yeah. So I thought I was all done. And again, not by choice, just because I knew how I felt. And it also got to a point, within a few weeks, it got to a point that I wasn't even able to bend down and touch my knee or my toes or my calves or anything. Jeez. I was starting to wonder if, am I going to be paralyzed, And luckily, I had a team of people that made that not happen. But I also was really afraid at this point. So I just figured I was all through, And I forged a friendship with Cookie. Cookie didn't drive because she was a city girl. And she took the train everywhere. But she needed to go to a show. And she asked if me and my dad would take her for Mario Savoldi. It was a TV taping. So we said, sure, yep, no problem. So we jumped in my car. We all went. This was 3 years after I had the injury. And we're sitting out in the crowd, me and my dad, and she went in with her bag and everything. And she came out and she said, you got to help me. And I said, what's the matter? I thought she needed help with her outfit, something, And so I was going to go in the back and help her. And she said, oh, the girl didn't show up and this is for TV. I need you. And I said, what? I said, I can't. I haven't been in the ring for 3 years, and I wasn't even around long enough. I think I had two or three matches before that injury happened. So I was like, no, I can't. And on TV, well, I did, and I was back for 25 more years. There you go.
So now you weren't training for a comeback. I mean, when you broke your neck, for all intents and purposes, it was over for you then, right?
Oh, yep.
So that come into the ring was totally unexpected.
Oh my God, totally. Yeah, and it was the worst match of my life, by the way. And I have it on video, and I think I've watched it twice, and I haven't watched it for probably 20 years because it was so bad and it's so embarrassing.
So how long after that did you feel like you hit your groove back?
Oh, geez. It was, I would say, within 6 or 8 months, I was at LPWA.
Okay.
Yep. So I was back full time for me. I say full time, but full time for me. I was back wrestling. So yeah. And I'm telling you, I know a lot of the guys say it, and I don't know if anybody really believes this or not, but once it's in your blood, it is. It's in your blood, and you can't get it out. Can't get it out.
No, we've heard that more than once for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like once I had that little taste of it, and maybe even if that girl did show up and I just watched them and I sat there and said, I wanted that to be me. I wanted that to be me in there with her. Damn it, I'm coming back. That might have happened, but I wasn't given that choice. She was like, you gotta do this for me. And she had done so much for me at the beginning when I was so green, and other people might have been, pretty rough with me. And she could have, because she could have knocked me out. This girl was tough. And she didn't. And that's why everybody liked working with her, because she was light as a feather and she had the patience, as my mother used to say, the patience of Job. Whoever that is, but that's what she used to say.
He wasn't a Jober.
No. Do the Job.
Do the Job. Yeah. And you know what? I have to give Cookie credit. That night, can you believe this? They made her do the job.
Oh, wow.
And I did her the favor, and they made her do the job.
So
I felt an inch big.
The cookie crumbled that night, huh?
The cookie crumbled that night, but I'll tell you, total pro, didn't care, appreciated what I did. And I probably would have been way worse if it wasn't against her in there. It was already bad enough, but much, much worse. And I probably would have been more injured if it wasn't for her. So I owe her a lot. But that's how it happened. That's how I got back.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Weird, but cool.
Following your return, you had a very lengthy career, illustrious. You won titles all across the world. As Benny mentioned in your intro, you were honored by the Cauliflower Alley Club, inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. I know our friends at the Cauliflower Alley Club just had their annual reunion banquet at the end of August. Several big names honored, mentioned. I'm personally a lifetime member, so I'm always fond of the respect that comes from the Cauliflower Alley Club, and of course the New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, one of the premier pro wrestling Hall of Fames, given the talent that's come out of the Northeast. So I'm curious, in a roundabout way, do you have an accolade that you're most proud of?
So I would say the Cauliflower Alley Club, because back then the president was Luthez. And back then, the board was filled with like real, legit, hardcore, old school people. And when I say back then, it's 1994, I believe, is when I was honored. And when I was honored, it was the same night Pedro Morales was honored, and I'm trying to think of who else. Pedro Morales, Gorilla Monsoon. And I just sat there and said to myself, I almost can't even go up there and be on stage with them. Because to me, they were like huge stars. Yeah, and the fact that I was getting honored the same night by the same organization as them, and I stood there with my award in that group picture. Wow. Like, what an honor. So to me, that's the hugest one. And one that just really touched my heart a lot was last year. I was inducted. I was given one of the Lifetime Achievement Awards at the ISPW, Tommy Fierro. I thought that was really, really nice. And I drove to New Jersey for that. And it was a very nice time. Saw a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a long time. And just the fact that I haven't wrestled in 11 years now, and to be remembered and to be honored was kind of a big deal for me too.
That's definitely some illustrious company.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have, when you mentioned Gorilla and Pedro from the early days of the WWF and WWF, I mean, that's some of the easily two of the greatest of their generation. And of course, they're contributions between the representations of Hispanics in wrestling and then Gorilla Monsoon. I mean, the fact that to this day it's still called the gorilla position, like his contributions to wrestling can't be understated. That's amazing.
No, it was unbelievable. I was like, I'm not worthy. But
just curious, did they treat you like one of the guys, or were you, or I should say one of the boys? I mean, because they obviously everyone's on stage is equal at that point.
Yeah, and I think that probably had part to do with the fact that Moolah and Walter inducted me. So, they said what they said about me. And so everybody there, if they didn't know me, they knew who I was trained by. And they inducted me together. So, that just was like probably the biggest night of my life. And I didn't even realize it at the time. Like I did, but I didn't. You know what I mean? It was a huge deal. I think my dad was like super, super proud. And, I had some friends there with me and everything. And a bunch of people from Walter's school came. And, it was a really big night for me. And I don't think I realized how big of a deal it was back then. And the more time I spent in the business, I realized how important it really was, and I was a big part of the Cauliflower Alley Club for many years. And I enjoyed my time very much there. It was great.
Well, that's awesome. Transitioning as we wind down, I wanted to get your thoughts. I know following other interviews you've done, you do watch and keep up with some of the modern product. You have mentioned before being mostly AEW.
Yes.
Benny, we've had some talks on the Dan and Benny page. Obviously, the big story that came out of AEW the last few days, I happen to be wearing one of his old shirts, was the termination of CM Punk's contract from AEW. As someone who knows the business and has been on the inside and has been a professed AEW fan pretty much since the beginning, I'm really curious what your opinion is on the whole CM Punk story.
Well, I think that there's two sides to every story, and I don't think everybody else knows that both sides yet. And I think once it comes out, then, we could make good decisions. But like right now, I mean, the first thing that I heard was, well, Jungle Boy started it, so he's the one that should have got let go. Then, CM Punk, he's a cancer in the business. He does this everywhere, blah, 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 blah. They did that. And then just a couple of days after that happened, then he's at Cauliflower Alley Club with a few friends of mine. And, my friends are like texting me from there and telling me like, oh yeah, there's definitely more to this story. And they didn't want to betray his trust, so they didn't tell me, damn it. But, I think that there's a lot more to the story than what we all know right now. But I can say that back in the independents, I did know him, and I didn't really care for him because I think he had a big ego back then. I didn't really care for him, met him just the one time and didn't like him. His ego was too big. Is it still today? I have no idea. But did he make a name for himself and did he do well? Of course. Of course he did. Everybody loves him, but all these other workers, he's a cancer in the locker room. We don't know what happened. We don't know. And until we do know, I can't make an informed decision. Or opinion, I should say.
I can respect that. I know following wrestling, we always say there's three versions to every story. The truth, or I should say four versions to every story: the truth, his version, the other guy's version, and then whatever Dave Meltzer reports. So
very much true.
Well, that one you can throw right away.
That's what I said. There's two versions. There's Dave Meltzer's reports and the truth. So
right, true.
But Benny, as we wrap up, I mean, great conversation. Brittany, we loved having you on. Last question to you, Benny. What are you thinking?
So, Brittany, if you had to do it all over again, would you have done it any differently?
I wouldn't have done that sunset flip. That's the only thing I would have done differently.
Not you wouldn't have pursued WWE or.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Damn it, I had the outfits I wanted to wear. I had 18 different ones designed for me, and that's what I was going to wear. And I'll tell you, to end it, the way I looked at it was this. I'm not wearing something that my father would have been ashamed of because he was in the audience. And I wouldn't do that to him.
You stayed true to that for all those years.
I respected him too much to go out there and wear something skimpy. So that was half of it. And then the other half was I respected myself too much. And I wanted people to know that I'm there as a wrestler, not TNA.
I did see a match where you wrestled as a babyface and you almost looked uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was.
Like it was work. I mean.
Yeah, bad. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
It's funny, you always hear about the consummate face. It's nice to interview the consummate heel.
Yeah, right. The real one. I mean,
right.
It wasn't an act.
I've been a fan of wrestling, following wrestling my whole life. I know, Benny, you've been a few decades more than I have. I don't think I've ever seen a heel move more heelish than running over a homeless person. I don't know about you, but
hey, don't touch me.
Now, I'm sorry to shine light on that. Like you said, everything seemed he was clearly fine. It's just the nonchalant reminds me an interview I did a couple of years ago on a different. I was a part of a panel on a different show, and we were interviewing a gentleman who had written a book about his years in the mafia. And he just casually, while telling the story, he's like, "Yeah, well, he's the only one of that group I didn't kill." Like, wait, I'm sorry, what? And we kind of looked at each other like, did our guest just randomly confess to 3 murders? And he's like, no, it's fine. We had to deal with the feds. And he goes into this whole spiel about like why he was able to get away with it, but just so casual, you know. Yeah, I killed 3 people. It's like, oh, okay, awesome.
Now, so you're gonna
and let's back to the book, you know.
You're gonna have to tell me more about that later, because my big interest in life, besides insurance and wrestling, is true crime.
Oh man.
I have a true crime memorabilia room, so you're gonna have to talk to me later.
We gotta chat some more then. That's a big one.
My wife would get along great.
I think what happened there was Kowalski probably went out and saw the homeless guy and said, if you call the police, I'll finish what that girl started.
Exactly.
And that's why he didn't call the cops.
He put that claw up and the guy went running.
Right.
With one bad leg.
Well, Brittany, I know you said you're obviously, you know, it's been years. Do you have anything coming up? Anything you want to share? Where can anybody find you if they want to look up some of your old work?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, there's tons of stuff on YouTube.
There is, yes.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on YouTube, and, you know, I'm on Facebook. That's really, I have Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. I can't even call it that. But I'm not really active on there, but I am active on Facebook. I'm on a lot, and I do share a lot of things. And we do have an IWF, which is Killer Kowalski's Federation. We have the 10th annual reunion coming up on September 23rd, and Ron Shaw's coming down for that. We have a lot of great people from Walters. We have about 46 people coming, and I look forward to that every year because we're all still really, really, really good friends, and I think this reunion that we do annually has really made us continue to be so much part of each other's lives. In fact, the other day I just went out to, I don't know if you guys know Walter's old ring announcer, Mel Simons. He's also on WBZ in Boston. I just had dinner with him Saturday night, and I mean, we're all such good friends from Walters, all of us are. So we have that reunion coming up, and everyone's looking forward to it.
Nice.
Very cool. Well, again, great show. We appreciate the time. We appreciate the stories. So everyone, Obviously, Dan and Benny in the Ring, we can be found anywhere podcasts can be listened to. Special thank you to our YouTube friends, Monty and the Pharaoh, for the Boston Bad Girl, Brittany Brown, for the original Long Island Ice B, Benny Scala. I'm Dan Spaciano. Have a good night, everyone, and we will see you next time we're in the ring.
Thank you.